Okay, let's get this kicked off. I'm very excited to welcome our first speaker, Steve Pereira. He is the DevOps and Digital Transformation Consultant at Visible, and formerly, well, I guess, and always, until the end of time, the founding CTO of StatFlow. We're playing the hits right off the top. He's going to be talking about his top transformation tools. Let's welcome him to the stage right now.
Thank you, thank you. All right, so I've got a clicker. And I have slides on one monitor. Okay, so what I really want to share with the audience today is something that I really love about the culture of DevOps, this focus on the next greatest thing, always improving, constantly iterating towards safer, better, faster. And what I use to really help teams improve their performance and improve their quality. So I run a company called Visible. It's just me. And I'm also really involved in the DevOps community. I'm kind of a DevOps nerd. I've run a DevOps TO, which is a meetup that's been around since 2011. And I'm running a conference at the end of the month, and I'll share some information about that. So I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this old TV show called Seinfeld. There's this episode where Kramer's amazed that anybody can shower in less than an hour, right? Which, how many people take an hour to shower these days? Lucky, so lucky. But this kind of reminds me of your average organization when they think of how they compare to a company like Netflix or Spotify or any of the fast-moving unicorns in Silicon Valley, right? There's this huge difference between the average organization and high-performing organizations that are utilizing DevOps and the latest tools and everything. And how do we think about getting there? How are we ever going to make that jump from where we are, taking an hour shower, to a 10-minute shower? And a lot of the key metrics, if you dig into DevOps and what people are talking about these days, most of the metrics are centered around iterations and releasing more often. Because the more often you can release your software, the more often you can pivot and get feedback from your experiments, get feedback from your customers, and do exactly what you should be doing at any given time. If your release cycle is 12 months or 2 years, it's going to take you that much longer to get that information to allow you to improve and move in a different direction, right? Adopt the latest tools or the latest techniques. So how do we really find the time to improve and really drastically cut down our release cycle? Some of these numbers at the bottom, these are my personal results from really digging deep into how companies release software. And this is at previous companies, all the way back to when I used to work for IBM in customer support. And this technique that I'm going to share with you is something that's worked for me reliably for a number of years in shrinking process time so that we could iterate as quickly as possible and learn as quickly as possible. And one of the core tenets of this philosophy is a lot of people get distracted by little tiny things that are easy to understand but aren't going to make a huge difference in what they're doing. And this can be things like, changing the type of soap that you're using in the shower is not going to make a big difference in how long it takes you to finish that shower, right? It's not going to get you to the 10-minute shower. And what often happens is people get stuck on this tools idea, that tools are going to make a humongous difference and they can just sprinkle some Kubernetes on whatever they're doing or add a new CI tool and it's going to make this massive change for them. And meanwhile, the real thing that's eating up all their time is the fact that they have one person who can deploy software and they go on vacation and the whole company shuts down, right? Like, Or one person has the keys to the kingdom and they leave the company, and all of a sudden your project that was supposed to be delivered in 3 weeks is now going to be 9 months while you find someone else and train them and bring them on board, right? So we're often blind to these big chunks of our processes that could just sideline us for an indefinite amount of time. And what I want to sort of emphasize is when we're looking at repeated processes and what we can do with process improvement and accelerating our release cycle is you can get these results by looking at anywhere in your processes that are repeating on a regular basis, right? Your showers every single day. So every improvement that you make in your shower routine pays off forever on a daily basis, right? And the technique that I use to look at processes and that I want to share with you is called value stream mapping. And it has this long and totally boring history that goes all the way back to manufacturing physical products, which nobody does anymore, right? But the core philosophies are very applicable to what we're doing in software now. Because everything starts with an idea or starts with a customer request, and it finishes with a customer getting some result, or with us getting some data, or some kind of product on the other end, right? It's all the same, right? If you have raw materials and a product at the other end, that process is what we can really focus on improving. And the way that this works is you take a product team or a project team, it's a big group of people, you gather them together, and you put them in a room with a whiteboard, and you map out what your process looks like. So let's say we have a software delivery lifecycle. Let's take a whole project team or a whole product team. That includes your operations staff, your developers, your product owner, your product manager, your success folks or your support folks, your QA folks. Gather them all together. In some cases, you have your salespeople in there and your marketing people, right? Because the more people who share the same picture of what's going on, the better. The more you're going to get that holistic view of your process and you'll be able to improve it. So I'm going to take you on a tour of what a value stream mapping exercise actually looks like. So picture we're in a room with a whiteboard. This is our whiteboard. First thing we do, we all declare a common goal, right? So 100% faster means we want to do what we're doing in half the time. And this is a common benchmark. You could say 30 times faster, whatever you want. You could say, I want us to be able to ship a new feature in 5 seconds. It wouldn't be a realistic goal, but it's a goal, right? You want this to be somewhat attainable, but its purpose is really to align everybody along the same line so everybody knows what we're doing, why we're in the same room, taking this time out of our busy days. Next thing you do, and this is an example of a software delivery pipeline, hugely simplified for this case, but you lay out every single step of this process. And going around the room, what happens is you have people who didn't realize that there was a step, that step 3 was actually there, or they'd never seen the whole thing together. And it really helps drive a team in the same direction when everyone shares the common view of what's actually happening. And this is just the current state, so it's going to be ugly. All the warts are in here. But the idea is to get this picture out in front of everybody. And you start to see, all of a sudden, people will realize, well, that looks crazy. But it's not, we don't have to worry about chopping things up yet. What we really want to do is start measuring so that we can make very good decisions about what we should focus on. So we don't want to focus on micro optimizations, right? The macro optimization means that you have to look at everything. So we start measuring, and these can be guesses, but you measure your average time for each of these steps. You measure the worst case scenario, and then you're measuring the lag and the wait time between them, right? Because it could be that it's one part of your pipeline that's holding everything up, or there's a few. But it's very common to see 1 or 2 things that are way worse than everything else, and that's where you can focus your time. So if we look at this example, what tends to happen is you start to see this highlight where this number is in minutes. This is so much higher than everything else. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to optimize something in the pipeline. So we ignore the fact that our deploy is between 15 and 30 minutes because that's fine, right? Like, that's obviously not the biggest problem. So a lot of teams will get stuck on the fact that Netflix can deliver in 5 minutes. We have to deliver in 5 minutes, or else we're not doing the DevOps and we're not cool. And we're never going to be a unicorn. But that's a total waste of time, right? Even if you carve that in half, you're optimizing like 0.1% of your process. And no one's going to notice, right? You're going to pat yourself on the back, and then you're going to go back to your job and wonder why everything still sucks. So this gets really bad when you start looking at the fact that 90% of the tasks that go from your product team to your dev team get sent back because the requirements aren't clear or they don't like the way that things are worded, right? So doing this exercise really helps highlight what's actually painful and share it with everybody, because all of a sudden everyone can see that this is the most painful part of the process. And that really starts getting the gears moving, and it really starts moving the needle. So what I like to do is I take everything that we drew up on the whiteboard, I throw it in a spreadsheet so we can slice it and dice it and sort it, and we can highlight things, and conditional formatting is an amazing thing. And you get to see this easily accessible dashboard that you can share through the whole team. It costs you $0, because everybody has, who doesn't have access to a spreadsheet, right? It's everywhere, right? We all know how to use them. So this process is going to cost you nothing but an extended lunch hour. You get a dashboard that everybody can look at through the whole company, and all of a sudden, everyone can see what you're working on and how it's progressing. So after you define this current state, of course it's ugly, but you also get an ideal state. So you define what it could look like and what it should look like. And that's kind of the North Star that keeps the team focused on the light at the end of the tunnel, right? Because this is not always a simple process, but you'll find that once you start carving away these pieces, you're making huge strides because you're actually focusing on things that make a difference. So this ideal state hopefully hits that metric of 100% faster, right? So all of a sudden you know we've hit our goal if we make it look like this, or if it looks close to this, which is fantastic, right? Because who can say what the effect of switching to Kubernetes or switching your CI system is? It's hard to say, right? How can you measure that stuff? So tracking an improvement is built into the system, and that's what I love about it, because it means that this improvement is visible to everybody in the company. And you can share these wins really easily, and it keeps people motivated. So some of the common issues that will pop up is you'll see that nobody owns a step, right? If nobody owns a step, who's going to improve it? How's it ever going to get better? And you'll see that there are single points of failure. So whoever owns the step, if they don't have a backup, that person going on vacation or that person getting sick, that's where you see that wrench in your process. If you've got email steps, you know, how long does it take to answer an email? It could be any period of time, right? Who knows? And that's where you see the difference between your average and your worst case. Things like email or trying to schedule a meeting where you have 5 different people and trying to get them in the room. All of a sudden you're waiting 3 weeks to get a decision on something that could happen over Slack in 2 seconds, right? Or something you could automate, right? Who knows, if we always make the decision the same way based on the same criteria, we can automate it. But you don't know unless you look at the picture, unless you can see the full picture. And the payoff for this is enormous, right? In my experience, this has been the single game changer in making a dramatic difference in all of my teams. And it's humongous. You'll see, like on this, I don't know how the colors show up. Prod deploy doesn't even factor in. Like my production deploy example is from 5 hours down to 10 minutes. It doesn't even show up because it's so insignificant. Compared to a project, a transformation project, you cut a transformation project from 8 months down to a month, that's humongous, right? And your average medium-sized company these days has dozens of teams. So you multiply that success horizontally through your whole company. that's all I have. I should stop ranting about it. I'm happy to talk to people. I wanted to share, I've got a special discount code for our conference at the end of the month. It's going to be at Brickworks. It's going to be amazing. There's going to be hundreds of people there. It's our best yet, and we're on year 6. But that's it. Thank you very, very much. I'm happy to answer questions. One thing I want to highlight, this link at the bottom, JMP talk resources, that has all my points from the talk and examples and all my slides and everything. So it's all open source. Thank you very much.
I appreciate the commitment to the processes that you have your resources there for everyone to learn from. So as I think the mic runners are going to get set up to allow people in the audience to ask any questions they'd like to. I got one right off the top. So just even what you were saying with the idea to focus on the macro instead of the micro resonates with me. But then with that, you're talking about, everyone has a spreadsheet. You can measure, optimize the data. There's the human factor as well. Mm-hmm. And within these teams, everyone has their own kind of particular little island. And some of those macro issues in terms of the deployment schedule might be like sticky wickets for some people. So how do you, I didn't hear a lot about communicating this or maybe building buy-in. Is it just simply a matter of showing them the data, or how does that usually go?
I find that showing people the data makes a massive difference because what tends to bog people down with office politics and people having strong opinions about things is that if they're not substantiated by data, it's very difficult to have a conversation, right? So I find having something where everyone is looking at the same information, how are you going to disagree about something in a spreadsheet? Yeah. It's your odds of a massive dispute are much lower than something conceptual about, the definition of DevOps, that's gonna ruin everyone's day. But pointing to a number and saying,
I still don't know it. I don't know it.
Do you agree that this number says 500?
So it's taking it from the feeling about the thing to knowing about the thing.
Right, it's kind of taking the emotion out of it. And I think a major tip for me to share about this is that focusing on the current state as the reality that is it's based on the process. The problem is the process right now, right? The problem is the system, not the people in the system.
It's not the person owning that delay because they might be pushed under by 3 things. Okay.
Totally.
So in this hypothetical example, when you said that people shouldn't shower for an hour, I felt attacked. But if you show me some data on my water usage, I'm like, okay, that's a lot of water. I shouldn't be using that. It's not my fault. Right. Maybe I just need to change up my morning routine, and then I'm wasting less water.
Totally.
And then I have more time to watch Seinfeld episodes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good.
I think I figured out what DevOps is.
I shouldn't pick on people's shower routines because that can be a sensitive topic.
I'm eating a sandwich. I'm singing songs. I'm checking Twitter. It's crazy town.
It's the Kramer way.
It's the Kramer way.